Hey all, been a while, so I figured what I'd do is make a new entry, maybe to spark some discussion. There's really no message here or anything didactic. I'm just going to tell a story that of an experience and see what you all have to say about it, or what you think. One of the guys who initially trained us in on hypnosis, his name is Patrick Porter, and we were talking about different hypnosis techniques. And one of the things that we never really did was anything having to do with like past lives or anything along those lines. And he didn't really do it either. I mean, he didn't have any techniques or anything along those lines. I've read up on some of them and I think I could do it, but have really only done one. And nothing interesting, remotely interesting happened during that one. But he did tell us one day that he had had a client come in to see him about an irrational fear of water, of swimming, drowning. And so he worked with the woman. Now, there's several different things you can do hypnosis-wise or NLP, which is neuro-linguistics programming-wise, to get rid of irrational fears. And really, um, usually when you have somebody come in with like an irrational fear of like flying or water or dogs or whatever, that's one of the highest percentage chances that we have of like solving, well, via hypnosis, of curing that. And usually that can get done in like one visit. It's a really good methodology for getting rid of like irrational fears. But one of the techniques that's used in getting rid of irrational fears is regression. And regression means you go back in time. You put somebody in a hypnotic state, and you have them go back to the moment. And generally, if you have like an irrational fear or something along those lines, there's a certain feeling that you get in. I guess it's something similar. Like I've talked to people who have had like migraines before, and they just have like a certain feeling, and they know exactly that they're going to get a migraine. It's like a symptom, a feeling that comes along that kind of telegraphs what's going to happen. And it's the same thing with sort of an irrational fear. There's a certain feeling that you have associated with that irrational fear, which is nice because then what you do is you just get somebody down into a hypnotic state, and then you have them track back to the very first time that they remember having that feeling. And then usually you're at the origin of wherever that fear came from. I have like another long story that it's sort of interesting on those times, but that's for another time. And then you can resolve it in some way or another. So he had this woman who had come in for an irrational fear of drowning or being on water. And so he got her down into a light hypnotic state, and he did the thing where he was, told her to track back to the very first time that she had that feeling. And when he asked her to do that, she was like, "Oh," and he was like, "Well, what?" And she said, "Well, that's not me." And he says, "Well, what is it that you see? What is it that you're experiencing?" And she goes, "Well, there's a couple, and the couple is out on a lake in a boat, and the man is is proposing to the woman." And so he said, "Well, if you were one of those two, who would you be? Would you be the man or the woman?" And she said, "Well, I'm the woman." And he goes, "Well, what happens?" Well, in the course of the proposal, the boat capsizes and the woman drowns. And so what he did was pretty much say, "Well, you can see how that's not really associated with you anymore, that you can let that go." And she said, yeah, she could see that that whatever that fear is, or however that's grounded, that no longer applies to her, and that she can let that go. And so they ended up, it was a little bit more, intricate than that. But he ends up bringing her up, and from what I understand, it was not a problem for her afterwards. So the interesting thing with this is, you know, was was there a past life in which she had drowned after being proposed to on a boat? Um, and that's why it was resolved. That's where the original fear came from, or not. I mean, it's also equally as possible that um, it makes no difference where the original fear had come from. If she thought that that had happened and then they were able to resolve that, then that's just as good. So it's not a proof one way or another, but it is sort of an interesting story. It's an interesting thing that happened that, because she did not come in for a past life regression. And it did resolve her issue. So anyway, I just thought I would, put that story out there as I had heard it from him, that case sort of study, and see if you have any thoughts on it. That's it. Thanks. Bye.